Hello and welcome. I'm moving on, straight on, with your comments and questions. More of a comment here. Question no. So interesting. So interesting. Sometimes all we need is a little space. Is the roof tight on top of the walls, or is there a gap for airflow? There's a huge gap. It's not tight on top of the walls. The idea being is the roof is suspended on ridge poles or posts, and the walls finish somewhere short of that, and this is for airflow, but it's also the natural design of buildings here. The windows are open, there's no glass, and I've not replaced the doors or rehung the doors because I wanted, yes, that feeling of spaciousness. We strive in our practice towards our end goal of nibbana, but often it is said that we can have a glimpse of nibbana through the attainment, if you can call it that, not so much of an attainment, but a fruit of our practice being the Pali word sunnata. Sunnata, translated as emptiness. But emptiness implies a container that is empty, so an emptiness that is contained. And that doesn't really correctly describe the meaning of sunnata, which is better described as infinite spaciousness. And I hope by not being enclosed with glass, doors, netting, and all manner of things to keep things out, we don't have that feeling inside here of being kept in. On a more practical level, we are fortunate to have 3 fans. Less fortunate in that one, after a long visit from the man who fitted it yesterday, the electrician, who also did the lighting and the wiring, because one of the fans was clicking, click, 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 click. I turned it on. I was delighted that this problem had been solved, only to turn it on again this morning and it to click, 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 click. And I sat with this feeling for a moment or two and thought, well, what to do? Hard to explain. It's a quite subtle noise that non-practitioners mightn't consider even, or even notice. But if you're sitting in here for a long time in silence, or recording these talks, for instance, it becomes very noticeable. And as experienced practitioners, we can certainly live through that. It's not a problem. It's not earth-shattering. It's not really suffering. It's one of those little irritations that we learn to develop patience with and equanimity. But in some circumstances, we have to be practical and say, well, why? There are 3 fans, 2 are silent. Why, having invested through your kind donations money in having fans, put up with something that is less than satisfactory when the problem can be resolved? So I'll have to try and get in contact again today and suggest they just take this one away, take it back to the shop and exchange it for a replacement. We'll see how that goes. But the practical side of it is, with fans, this it tends to distract the interest of the mosquitoes and the flies or flying creatures, small flying insects that would otherwise come in and buzz around your head. Without fans, it would be difficult. But even if you fully enclose a place or sit in a mosquito net, it only takes one, doesn't it, to come in through a gap, or for you to allow in through your entrance and exit, to have the same problem all over again, but exacerbated in that it cannot escape, it cannot get away from the situation. So the decision was made, well, I made the decision to keep it all open and just have fans. And it works when one of those said fans is not clicking. So that's the idea. And sunnata, infinite spaciousness, is this feeling of no thought, no physical feelings, but freedom from the 5 khandhas that I've spoken of so much recently. I won't go into them all again now. Even if you just look back at the last 2 talks, we've spoken of the 5 khandhas in detail. Freedom from that, and a temporary state of freedom from suffering, freedom from anxiety, freedom from concern about the past, worrying about the future. Freedom, liberation, sunnata, emptiness. Hopefully this meditation hall visually depicts that and gives a sense of that feeling. And the air does flow, yes. Yes, when the wind blows up, you can feel it through the doors and it airs the roof. Stops things getting damp and mouldy in the humidity here. Okay, so I have no real difficulties to understand and integrate impermanence and uncertainty, or let's say, I suppose, uncertainty of the life. What I struggle with is the existence of evil, the evil which target the most innocents, babies, infants, that I really don't understand. There is evil, or let's say there are the causes of this evil. Evil is the manifestation of people's greed, people's hatred, and people's delusion in their behavioral characteristics we call evil. It isn't a mystical presence, something separate. It is portrayed as that in some philosophies, some ideas, but it is our own doing, our own actions of body, speech, and mind. And within us all, there is greed, hatred, and delusion, in Pali, lobha, dosa, moha, which are the root defilements inbuilt within our inherent human nature, having been born into this realm as a result of ignorance, or having not been liberated, having not attained to ultimate wisdom and nibbana. We have been born into this fortunate realm where we can continue our practice and develop. But that practice of moral virtue, and this cat's chasing mosquitoes again. So if I had the other fan working, that wouldn't be so much of a problem. But anyway, oh dear. The practice is ultimately about reducing, eroding, these defilements of greed, hatred and delusion. So you really don't understand why there is evil. Well, that is why there is evil. Because not everyone is practicing to get rid of greed, hatred and delusion. In fact, the majority are, through their delusion, that is ignorance of the Dharma and not being practitioners, are often fueling greed. They want something, so they go and get it. They strive to get it, only to find it does not bring satisfaction. So they need more. So they strive harder to get more. It's like adding fuel to a fire, fuel to the fire of desire, increasing that desire, that thirst, that craving. This is the nature of greed. And this can manifest in behavioral characteristics of grabbing, taking, even taking that which is not yours, stealing, or depriving others of something through your own craving, thirst, through their own craving, thirst. This is what we portray, and in the worst cases, see as evil. But when you look at it and its cause, what is resulting in this behavior, it is delusion, it is ignorance. And we don't try to understand the actions, but we look and we understand through our own training, our own practice, the cause of those actions, being ignorance or delusion. Ignorance, avidya in Pali, is different to delusion, which is more confusion. You see, there can be people with extremely intellectual thinking brains, very highly qualified. Even in the Dharma, in scriptures, in advanced Dharma, like Abhidharma, the inner workings of the mind, and still not apply that to their own actions of body, speech and mind. Still not having developed compassion or loving kindness, still act on their defilements of greed, hatred and delusion. That is delusion, harder to see than greed, harder to see than hatred, because of course it's confusion. Having all the information isn't the end, it's applying it. It's applying our intellectual knowledge to our actions of body, speech and mind. And this requires very little intellectual knowledge, but an understanding of human nature, that we all have greed, hatred and delusion, and then rather than hatred, hating the individuals or the perpetrators of such considered evil actions, we can see the cause of those actions, and the reasoning behind those actions is their ignorance, avidya, or delusion. See, unfortunately, there's some killing going on here. It's unavoidable, it's nature, but this is the cat, it's unenlightened, it's deluded, it's possibly also, well, it's not hungry, I've just fed it to stop it chasing frogs, but still playful in their nature, and greed is there, manifest in their what is considered an evil action. Some creature that was flying, probably only had 24 hours to live, is now in this spotty dotty kitten's tummy, and hopefully gone on to a happier, a better rebirth as a result of its premature demise. This we'll see in the world continually. Now, do I hate the cat for its actions? No. I have compassion for the cat for its actions, as we should try and have compassion for the perpetrators of evil that we witness ourselves. Because by hating those perpetrators, we're only manifesting evil and potentially evil actions within ourselves through adding fuel to the fire of ill will, hatred, aversion. So like greed, we can keep fueling through trying to satisfy thirst and craving. Likewise, evil we can also fuel by trying to fight hatred with hatred. The antidote to it is dispelling delusion through panya, wisdom, that comes as a result of our practice of keeping precepts, sila, moral virtue, and practicing meditation, samadhi, concentration, developing mindfulness in all of our daily activities, samasati, mindfulness, right mindfulness, samasamadhi, right meditation, all leads to panya, wisdom, on this Noble Eightfold Path. And this wisdom is what dispels delusion, allows us to see that through compassion for those perpetrators of evil, we don't create hatred, fuel hatred within ourselves. Now, this may not be transferable immediately to those perpetrators. They may continue with their evil actions until such a time they're unable to. The consequences of their akusala karma, so their bad actions, they will be the beneficiaries of, the heirs to, without doubt. You're only able to, by example, show others a better way. Preaching, teaching, telling will only be faced with resistance where there is so much delusion or ignorance to the understanding of this path. Many believe that one has to fight evil, fight hatred with hatred. But one of the first and primary teachings of the Buddha is that you cannot fight hatred with hatred, only with loving kindness. And that's difficult at first, metta, loving kindness for those evildoers. But when we take the second of those four Brahma Viharas, karuna, compassion, we don't have to delve so deeply to have compassion for someone's ignorance. So of course the kittens, the cats, playing, catching whatever the flying insects are, it's quite easy still to have metta, loving kindness for them. But they're killing. That metta, that loving kindness is coming out of compassion because we know they're ignorant to the evil they're doing. And this is what we must apply to that feeling of not understanding the evil in the world. Because to not do so is only going to build upon hatred within each and every one of us. And as practitioners, we can be free from that through those Brahma Viharas, metta, karuna, mudita, joy for others. Because we can have joy for others when they too realize the errors of their ways and become liberated. But just joy in that at least they have the opportunity, if and when they choose within this lifetime, to experience something different, to be free from suffering, if they choose. Education is there, information is there. Guidance, support is there. But we can't help everybody. So we help those that wish to be helped at first. So, are things written in Sadhama Pundarika Sutra true? Are things written about Bodhisattvas Avaloka Tishvara true? Please, Bhante Ji, remove this ignorance and illuminate it with light of truth. So only you can do that. I can speak, I can say words, but on this subject, unfortunately, I can't, because I think you're referring to the Lotus Sutra, sutras being a Sanskrit word of sutta, and this comes from the sort of Sanskrit tradition, the Mahayana tradition, the northern school of Buddhism, of which I have little knowledge, frankly, and are unable to illuminate you. So you can look it up online, read if you have teachers that can convince you of the truth in that, then all well and good. But I'm not the person to ask, I'm afraid. So a lot of these additional teachings that have come later than the original words of the Buddha and teachings of the Buddha contained in the Pali Canon are, let's say, allegories of those original teachings, ways to explain them, make them perhaps more attractive, and a lot of them are dependent on belief, a belief system, rather than just the simple facts that are so much evident and contained in the Pali Canon. So, yeah, sorry, I have to say on that one, I don't know if those things are all true or not. Well, I have my own ideas, but not wanting to, it's not my area of understanding, put it that way. May I know the size of the building? Well, it's here, what you see. I wouldn't know, I don't have any measurements. So I'm sitting here about in the middle of what is either the front or the back. The Buddha is facing east, facing the sun, the Buddha image here, that is, as the sun rises, and the sun sets behind the Buddha image here. As far as size is concerned, well, I'm of an average size. You can work it out from there. So I think you could probably get about comfortably 30 odd people sitting in here for practicing meditation, but for busier occasions, you know, for ceremonial purposes, you might get up to 40 or 50, especially if you include the veranda outside. This is referring to the water situation. Bhante, could we dig up a well here and draw water by hand? The place needs a well for beings and all new plants. Yes. So there's a lot of comments, thank you very much, coming in about the water and system here. And it was the original intention at the beginning of the Vassa for this, as well as my kuti, to have its own independent water supply. Now, we are working on that. That is the intention. And yes, there's many options have been offered, from collecting water from the roof and so on and so forth. And, you know, I've lived in all sorts of places, and I've lived with water and without water and had to collect water myself. So I'm very familiar with all the methods. But I have to comply, or am complying, with the local neighborhood in the village and people and their systems and the way things work. So it takes a little time. And, you know, even just like the fan, communication is very difficult. Now, if anyone local, Sri Lankan, who speaks very good English, I will say, Tourist English, I understand, is useful, giving directions, pointing people in the directions of water, of a restaurant, or how to get a bus. But there are aspects of the Vinaya that come into this, and ways monks have to live, what we can ask for, what we cannot ask for, what we can do, what we can't do, how things are funded. It's for a purpose. It's to protect our sila and keep our practice wholesome. And I've been able, this creation here, this meditation hall, has come about within the parameters of that Vinaya, without me having to handle money, without me having to ask for anything in particular. But when it comes to the finer details of such things, then it can become a little more complicated. So it's all well and good having all these wonderful suggestions, but if someone would come forth who can make these suggestions to the local people in their own language, that would be useful. Because as much as I try, the only reply I ever get is yes. Of course, yes, we'll do that, no problem. And it doesn't happen. Because they've not understood what I've asked or hinted at. Maybe because I'm not asking. But we don't ask as monks. We just sit and look sad and hope that the situation resolves itself. But it doesn't always. And as the water from its original source has been restored, I don't want to rock the boat there. So that's good. The problem has been temporarily resolved. But being as that's coming from another source, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem in the future. But if there's anybody local, there has been a kind gentleman, a Dayaka, this is a supporter of mine, whom is Sri Lankan and living in America, who's helped greatly with this situation so far, and resulting in the water supply being restored. But even then, the future source of water has become complicated by other issues, related and unrelated, that also need to be resolved and require someone locally whom speaks good enough English to understand what I'm saying, which isn't after all that complicated, but can explain that to people involved locally. So thank you for the suggestions and the concern. May I respectfully ask a question? Have you been able to experience deep concentration, samadhi, through samatha meditation? I've been practicing for a long time, but my mind is still restless and difficult to calm. Could you kindly give me some guidance? So, what is samatha meditation? It isn't a thing. This is often the case, that people take the two words, vipassana and samatha, which only appear in the sutras together, not as separate techniques or practices. Vipassana samatha is seeing clearly, is what vipassana means, and samatha means peace and tranquil states of mind. So seeing clearly leading to a peaceful state, tranquil state of mind is what vipassana samatha means. But many people take vipassana to be a kind of insight meditation technique, and samatha is confused with samadhi, sama samadhi, right concentration. So what your question is, I think, meaning to say, is have I experienced deep concentration through samadhi meditation, sama samadhi? But sama samadhi means right concentration. And deep focused concentration is something we can all experience if we practice. If we don't try, we won't get there. But it takes a long time and a lot of practice in conjunction with mindfulness throughout all of our daily activities. For some people, they'll attain to levels of concentration very quickly, but often they might only attain to levels, I say attain, but I don't mean attain, experience, as you say quite rightly, experience samatha, so peaceful and calm and tranquil states of mind. And consider that to be samadhi, the experience of samadhi. Deeply absorbed states of meditation resulting from samadhi, jhana, are even free from samatha. Samatha is a preliminary stage. Vipassana is a preliminary stage, but these are both qualities we develop. We develop the quality of vipassana, seeing clearly. We develop the qualities of samatha, peaceful and tranquil, calm states of mind, which assist, help us with samadhi, right concentration. But also, right concentration helps us develop vipassana and samatha, as well as right concentration helps us develop sati, mindfulness. They all work together. It's a holistic practice. So forget all this terminology and techniques and just follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Sila, keep the precepts and meditate. Forget the terminology, forget the words, the techniques, the systems, the teachers. There's one teacher, the Buddha. He said just sit and meditate and practice foremost mindfulness in all your daily activities. But even when you sit to meditate, put mindfulness first in front of you. Now I'm going to be mindful of everything that goes on from now on. I'm sitting for an hour. And do just that. Sit for an hour. Whatever happens, make that determination not to move. And then, yes, you will, regardless of my own experiences, which are not important, it's your experiences that are important, you will experience samadhi, concentration, focused attention, eventually. But preliminarily, and this isn't your question, you will experience samatha, peaceful and tranquil, calm states of mind. And many meditators, that is all they're looking to do. They have busy, stressed lives and minds and want some peace and calm and tranquility, and that is okay. But the marvelous thing is, if that's your practice to attain samatha, peaceful states of mind, it will lead to even greater things. The joys, physical rapture, mental joy, piti and sukha in Pali, of deeply absorbed states of meditation, secluded from the hindrances, secluded from physical feelings, secluded from mental proliferation. But firstly, this insight, vipassana, seeing clearly, will come as a result of concentration. So if you're concentrating, focusing on the breath, you will see clearly the nature of its arising and passing, its impermanence in each breath. But also, as a result of that seeing clearly, as you're observing the breath, as physical feelings come and physical feelings go, as mental emotions come, as mental emotions go, you'll see that nature of impermanence. Anicca. You'll see that nature of unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. And you'll see how that is out of your control and just going on, and therefore not a self, anatta. This is seeing clearly, this is vipassana. This is why vipassana samatha goes together. So they're not two separate practices that lead to samadhi. Samadhi helps you develop those qualities of vipassana and samatha. Read the Anapanasati Sutta, or a summary of it. Even in the chanting book, it's summarized. And do just that. Sit, put mindfulness in front of you, and observe the breath. This will lead to samadhi. Oh, hello again, mate. Right. When you talked of trance states not being part of Buddhism, I was confused. Tibetan Buddhism seems to be about attaining trance state. No? Possibly, yes. Again, like the Mahayana tradition, in this Vajrayana and Tibetan traditions, there are many other practices that have evolved subsequent to the original teachings of the Buddha. And this may be called, and is called, Buddhism, yes. But this is not what I practice here, and not what is taught in the suttas. So that's why I say that they're not being part of Buddhism. I'm referring to my own practice, which is the southern school, Theravada school of Buddhism, if it has to be called anything. But I'm just practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. And within the Noble Eightfold Path, Sama Samadhi, right concentration, is focusing our attention, like I was just saying, but not to transcend suffering, but to see clearly and understand suffering in order to be liberated from it by eradicating its cause. That is what we were talking about, greed, hatred and delusion, or desire resulting from greed, hatred and delusion. Rather than going into a trance-like state and therefore being free from suffering momentarily, we're not eradicating its cause. We're not seeing clearly. It may be beneficial, it may be enjoyable, and it may ultimately lead to freedom from suffering. But this is not what I practice. So if your interest is that, it's taught elsewhere. In other schools, other philosophies, other trainings, other practices. Yes. Hello, mate. Same comment. Thank you for your time. Do you know why this place was left to fall into disrepair in the first place? I think you're referring to this meditation hall. Well, there are many such places. It's cheaper and easier just to rebuild new. And they don't have such tight planning regulations and laws here as they do in where I come from and in Western countries. So, this was to refurbish this old building and create what we have here, probably cost, I don't know, at least 5 times as much as it would have cost just to have built a similar sized brand new building in the land next to it. But then one would still have this carbuncle of an affair of dilapidated building, and it would have been taking up what is now beautiful green space and making more of a footprint by building something new. So as we had the opportunity, we took that opportunity to look after what was already here. It also has much thicker stone walls, largely have had to be replaced but restored as best we can, and a much more substantial building than anything that could be built new. So why? Yeah, because it fell into a state of disrepair or became economically unviable. So the people who were living here died, and the younger families had moved out to their own places, and no one saw any purpose in trying to spend a lot of money on refurbishing this place. And this is why it was available. So we've taken advantage of that and also created something nice out of something old. And that's made local people very happy to see something be cared for and restored in that way. But you only have to go a few, not even kilometres, less than a few kilometres up the road, and there are many empty buildings like this. Also along this coast there are many, as a result of 20 years ago now, 25 years ago now, 20 years ago, the tsunami which ruined many properties and took many lives, more in this particular area than anywhere else in the world. Along this coast, and a lot of those properties, those buildings have not been rebuilt. I mean, a lot of superstition attached to that. People don't want to experience that again, so they've moved inland maybe, I don't know. And maybe people believe in ghosts haunting places and they don't want to move in because of that, or back in because of that. And some local people have assured me that the ghosts living here are very happy with what we've done. So if that's your belief, then that's okay too. We've done it with their permission and their blessing. So could you tell me about Buddhist beads you have hanging near your window? So that's in an old video where they were hanging in the window. I noticed there was a cross attached to it and was curious as to why. Is it interfaith related? Also, how many beads and how do you use them with your practice? No, it's just a mala. I don't wear a mala. We shouldn't wear malas. This is the 8th precept, or 7th precept rather. It pertains to jewellery. In fact, it doesn't say jewellery when we recite that precept. It says mala, which means necklace, referring to jewellery. So in the 8 precepts, we don't wear jewellery or adornments. But they have a use in other traditions. It's amazing how this cat can just tear through there so quickly and get so close to the camera, but not touch it, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd be forever up and down. But he is very busy today in here. So in my tradition we don't use the mala beads for any particular purpose. But if you go back to the last Vipassana day, and I think you'll see there, I chanted Itipiso, or tried to, 108 times, but I only got to 104. And then I tranced out into some kind of state where I couldn't even remember the words. Having just said it 104 times over and over again, my mind went blank, which is the sort of purpose of those kind of practices, which is why we don't practice them, though they're not useful, those kind of practices, really. Maybe just a bit of fun, but a useful exercise sometimes to see how we can do things differently. But that's how I counted 104, by counting the beads. So in answer to your question, on a traditional mala, there are 108 beads. That number, there's many theories behind why it's 108. It happens to be the number of, light years to the sun, or the number of minutes or seconds it takes for light to get here, something like that. It's also other reasons, but a practical reason is that we divide the 108 into four quarters, and we add 2, so that 100, which is a nice round number, we add a few extra beads just in case we lose count or miss a couple, something like that, to ensure we do 100 things. So I use it like a counting tool, a way of counting. And I used to use it for walking meditation. When I did a lot of walking meditation, I was living in a very noisy, busy environment, and at that time, I found meditation quite difficult, sitting through the distractions outside. So I do a lot of walking meditation. And to time that, rather than looking at clocks, I would count my walking up and walking back again with 1 bead, and found that 108 ups and downs, or twos and fros, or backs and forths, accounted for about, at my pace, 40 to 50 minutes walking meditation time. So if I wanted to double that, or any multitudes of that, to make an hour or an hour and a half of walking meditation, I just had to count the relevant beads. Rather than watching a clock or counting with numbers, you can almost subconsciously flick one bead back like this as you walk up and down. And when you get to what's called the guru stone, which is where it's all tied together, a slightly bigger bead and two beads attached together and the string coming out, which is what you've noticed and you think is the cross. It's just the string, the way it was hanging in the window. It's not a cross. When you get to that, you know you've reached the end of your 108 beads. And to mark those quarters, there's a small bead, a small glass bead between the larger sandalwood beads at each quarter. So there are, I think, 36 beads. My maths isn't very good, I don't know whether that's right. But then you have a glass bead. So you can feel that, you notice. So it's like a little clock, a little timer when you apply it to a set thing. So a convention of time, another convention of time. We've been talking about that recently. And something I've noticed this morning, if I haven't already mentioned it today, is that at this time of day, very early in the morning, I hadn't realized this before, the clocks I've been looking at imply it's yesterday. And I've been thinking it's yesterday, therefore for the whole day subsequently. Now, what I mean by that is these clocks go by my home country time in one view, or this clock, just because of the way it was set up. I've not paid much attention to it. So the day where it says it's now Wednesday, it's actually Thursday. I was doing something before I started talking and I thought, wow, I'm sure it was Wednesday yesterday. It's Wednesday again. It can't be. And I realised the reason is because that it is still Wednesday in the UK, albeit that it's Thursday here. But for a long time now, I've been walking around thinking that like today, it's Wednesday all day. Because it really doesn't matter here. Each day is much the same with the same routine as we go about our daily tasks. I don't have many. One of my new duties, which I really enjoy, is just sweeping this meditation hall. I pick up the mats, give them a shake, and just sweep the floor. It's a lovely mindful exercise. And then the little steps outside and the little path where people can take their sandals or flip-flops off. And it's part of my day. And whether it's Wednesday or Thursday or Saturday or Sunday, it doesn't matter. It's the same. My routine's the same. So yes, that's what those beads are for. And it's not a cross. Right, I have one point of confusion. You say only awareness remains unchanged. Doesn't proposing some fundamental unchanged essence or phenomena contradict the notion of anatta or sunyata and belongs more in Advaita Vedanta? Isn't it a Nagayuna? Isn't it as Nagayuna or Nagarjuna said, even emptiness itself is empty? Thanks for taking the time to answer. So I'm not sure I fully understand. This is where I'm referring to awareness or conscious awareness being that of the mind knowing, citta knowing. That is not self. Self is the thinking brain's conscious awareness vijnana, which is impermanent, dies with the physical body and thinking brain. A lot less complicated than Advaita Vedanta, and perhaps a little less complicated than what Nagarjuna is referring to. But as I've just spoken about sunyata, emptiness or infinite spaciousness, we already know that that is not anatta. Anatta is, as in anicca dukkha anatta, not self. It's just the understanding that we are not this physical body or thinking brain, as opposed to an experience, whereas sunnata is an experience. So don't confuse sunnata with anatta. Now that may be that sunnata and anatta are one and the same in the Vedic teachings, which precede Buddhism, and are not, again, something I know anything about. Or the little I know is not worth sharing, because it would be inaccurate, I'm sure, or lead to misunderstanding. So we're just talking about the old school Theravada tradition of Buddhism here, which is enough. If it leads to sunyata, infinite spaciousness, if it can lead to nibbana, what more do you need to know? If we have a goal, we are looking to strive towards freedom from suffering in this lifetime and freedom from rebirth into samsara. That's all, nothing more, nothing less. That's enough, isn't it? And that can be attained to. That goal can be reached through this practice of sila, samadhi, panya. And no big books necessary. So yeah, that citta, that mind. Did I say it remains unchanged? I'm not sure how I might have worded it, but it's not a case of it unchanged, being changed or unchanged, because as I said before in just a recent talk, I think yesterday or the day before, last week, it's not describable or comparable to anything of this conditioned realm. So change doesn't come into it as a concept. Someone is soon making a video about dependent origination and the scientific evidence of it. I think you should do the same for a different Buddhist teaching, because that would be a good learning opportunity for everyone. So there are not many talks about the 12 links of dependent origination, as I recall, if you search for that on YouTube. I don't really know about other platforms, but the 12 links of dependent origination, or paccittiya samuppada, is the sutta. And also there is a chant in the chanting books, in the Thai chanting books anyway, there's a paccittiya samuppada chant which summarizes it nicely without much commentary or explanation. But I have already made a video or a talk on that, but I think I might have used the word 12 and called it something like 12 steps, trying to sort of link it into how addiction is a result of dependent origination, because it is addiction that causes rebirth. Ultimately, we have the 12 links of dependent origination, which sound complicated, but really are just that ignorance leads to birth, and birth is a result of ignorance. So they go full circle, containing within them birth, then experience or sense contact, craving, and then ignorance leading to attachment through either liking or disliking, and subsequent rebirth. So a circular fashion. If you read through it, paccittiya samuppada, in the summarized form in the chanting book, it better explains it step by step. I will make another talk about that again soon, more specifically on the list and how it works. It doesn't need to be gone into too scientifically. It can be gone into scientifically, and the Abhidharma goes into all of these things scientifically as far as the way the thinking brain works. But if you just understand that it's through our ignorance that we cling and become attached, and it's through our ignorance that we fuel craving and thirst, and this, through our ignorance, leads to either rebirth into subsequent lives, rebirths into different realms and forms, but also within this life itself, we're reborn each and every moment through craving for the next, craving for becoming, wanting, rather than desire fueling the fire. And that is what we address in this practice. So, yeah, I mean, I will be talking about it, but not very scientifically. It is a science, Buddhism, but it's a simple science. And I think on that note, we must leave it there for the time being. Otherwise I'll be late for morning puja and subsequently Pindapata or alms round. And then my hospital dana visit, which is now a regular daily activity and a very enjoyable one and useful one, I think. Until next time, I hope there's something useful there. If there is, please use it. Otherwise, just let it go, put it down and don't let it bother you. But please come back again for more. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.